Welcome to another episode of the CarryTrainer Higher Line podcast. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Higher Line podcast. As always, brought to you by the wonderful lubricant from Gunfighter Gun Oil. We've got an excellent guest today, Mr. Ryan Cleckner. I've actually asked him in the past to be a guest, and he's like, just blew us off. And then I ran into him in person. He's like, I definitely didn't blow you off. And I'm like, you definitely did. And he's like, I definitely didn't. So anyway, here we are. Attorney, author, professor, which I want to hear more about, an executive, an entrepreneur, former sniper with, you were with 1st Ranger Battalion, right?
That's right.
Been seen on Tucker Carlson, other news outlets. You are co-owner of Gun University and RocketFFL, and I know you've done other things, which we'll talk about. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on, man.
That's a pretty full life. Attorney, author,
Yeah.
professor, executive, entrepreneur, sniper.
It is
and
pretty full.
Dad and a husband.
That just shows I can't commit to one thing.
Okay.
I mean, they all weren't done at the same time, right? Sniper was done when I was young and didn't know what else to do with my life. And that kind of just happened, which was still an amazing experience and formed me who I am today. But then things that happened after that was going to school and awful lot of asking what's next in life. I finished my undergraduate degree and said, what's next? And I was teaching out of the sniper school and decided that, I don't know, law school sounds like a good challenge. Let's go do that. And then it just rolled into one thing after the other.
So let's talk about attorney first. Let's start with attorney.
Okay.
Because that's what you put on your social media, that's what you're telling the world first. I took that off your website, off of ryancleckner.com.
Well, thanks for the plug. That's the easiest thing to explain, right? So you're at a cocktail party with friends and people ask, well, what do you do? I don't want to list all those things. So usually you just say attorney and people go, oh, cool. And they don't want to know anymore. And it's, sometimes how this leading with guns, depending on what meeting you're at, or what people you're at, you don't know what to do. And then they say, what kind of attorney are you? And I say, oh, it's boring. I do compliance work. And then it ends there usually.
So what you're telling me is you don't want to talk to people.
No, I love talking to people once I'm sure they're a good person to talk to. But when someone just randomly comes up and goes, hi, I'm Jim. What do you do? I don't want to say, well, I do this and I do that. And I a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It's a little easier to go, oh, I'm an attorney. And then when they ask me how much I'm an attorney and they realize I'm only an attorney for a few hours a month, then it can go from there. Yeah, I don't attorney very much. Being an attorney is not really that fun. You inherit other people's problems. You take other people's problems onto your shoulders. You help them to try to solve the problems. And then you don't get the benefit of any of the solution. I mean, you get paid. That's great. But then people move on and they don't come to you. Like, I guess to a doctor, people don't go and say, hey, doc, I'm feeling great. They come to a doctor when they're feeling sick. So they only come to me when there's a problem. And then I help them solve the problem, which is fun. I like solving problems, but then you move on. And so whatever stress you might be feeling in your life that you need to reach out to an attorney to grab, that attorney goes through that stress with you. And then you just go to the next one, to the next one, the next one. And it's a lot of paperwork and a lot of sitting in front of the computer. And being an attorney is typically sitting in an office. And I just don't like that as much. I like to get outside.
So it's not a John Grisham novel. It's not about street lawyers and like dudes getting out in the dirt and finding facts and arguing cases and
no. Well, not my kind of law. So I fancied myself a trial lawyer when I was in law school because I like to talk. I like to teach and debate things. And I thought, well, I'd be a trial lawyer. I could picture myself in front of a court. And then I started realizing how 99% of the work for trial work isn't in front of a jury anyway. It's filing motions and appeals and memos and things like that. And then I realized, well, if I went into criminal law, I don't know if I'd want to be a prosecutor. One, they don't really get paid, but two, I don't necessarily agree with all the laws that they're prosecuting.
Right.
I don't want to go on that side. And then I'm like, well, if I go on the criminal defense side, I could have a better living and I could help defend people, but then I might be defending people I don't want to defend. And either way, I have a family. I don't want my family getting threats from people, no matter which side I'm on.
Sure.
That sounds like a mess. And I already was older. So I'd already been in the military. I already did all these things by the time I went to law school. So to start out in any one of those jobs at like a big law firm, your first few years, you're paying your dues. You're not getting paid a whole lot and you're buried with work, tons and tons and tons of work. And I just didn't want to do that. So I rolled into the firearms industry, which felt like a good fit for me. And I started quickly on the legislative side of the firearms industry, working for the NSSF and dealing with, federal government relations. And I really liked it. The ATF rules made sense, and I went from there.
Real quick for you guys listening or watching, NSSF, National Shooting Sports Foundation. What did you do for them?
So I started as an intern my first summer in law school, working for the general counsel, and then they hired me at the end of the summer to be the manager of federal government relations. So working with congressmen and senators on bills and legislation, and not quite lobbying, but kind of lobbying for certain things, working with the ATF for the industry. So going to ATF meetings and saying, hey, look, your new rule says this for record keeping, but this is the burden on the industry and manufacturers, and can we change it to that? Those kind of things.
Which dovetails nicely into your FFL program, which is probably a good spot to segue into. So you started RocketFFL, which layman for me, and then you correct me if I'm wrong, I want to start a gun shop. I don't know how to go through all the paperwork. You created a website where dude like me can pay your website service to help me facilitate becoming a FFL.
Okay. The idea was, so after I left the NSSF, I went to Remington and worked compliance for Remington for a few years. And then I went out on my own as an attorney and said, all right, I'm going to go be a ATF firearms compliance attorney and help FFLs across the country. And I did that for a year. And I didn't enjoy it because, again, it was being an attorney all day, every day. And I caught myself repeating myself so much on people getting their FFL. So very often when someone gets their FFL, it's fairly easy to get. You can do it on your own. You don't need RocketFFL at all. But it's hard to do it the right way so that you don't have troubles later. So what would happen is these people would come to me, they'd be wrapped around the axle at the ATF. And I would, part of the solution, not only fixing their ATF problems, was getting them a new FFL and setting up the right way. And I caught myself over a period of a few days over and over with clients, giving them the same tips and tricks, giving them the same lessons and guidance. And I realized, I can't scale myself, but if I recorded this and just made it a course, it'd be easy. And RocketFFL was born.
It's that big a deal to have all the T's crossed and I's dotted correctly for somebody just to hire somebody like you. I've heard horror stories from all kinds of guys, especially now as the regulations are changing and then state by state, like in my state, I can do everything right with the feds, but then my state has a whole nother bunch of hoops to jump through.
Right.
New licensing. Does your website help with that stuff on a state level?
It does.
As well?
And I'm probably doing the worst sales pitch ever, which I don't mind doing because it's not that hard. It really isn't. I have the state stuff up there. You guys can do this. I'm so averse to coming across as a shill to saying you have to use my program and it's the worst thing ever. You don't. I've had a couple people online before have said, oh, he's just trying to get you to pay $50 to do for something you can do on your own. I go, no, I'm a firearms attorney. And when you get in trouble, I charge a stupid amount per hour. I charge $550 an hour to help you. I would, if I was just in it for the business, please go do it the wrong way and then come hire me later if I was in it for the money. Because making $50 to teach you everything all at once at your own pace and you have lifetime access to it, that's not a very good business decision.
That seems really cheap. I would have expected, and I don't normally do podcasts where we're talking about, like, because this sounds kind of sales pitchy, but that's just interesting. I have not looked at what it cost on your website. I would have thought it would have been I thought it would have been $1,000 or something like that.
No, it's $50. Now, what I do is because I am a businessman, the entrepreneur part, I do have a much bigger ATF compliance program. So the Get Your FFL course literally helps you just get your FFL and some basic compliance. Now, once you're up and running, if you want to know all these nuances and learn more, I have a program, but it's still only a few $100s a year. If you want to do that, that's completely separate. But yeah, getting your FFL, I like people getting their FFLs. I love helping with the industry. I love growing the industry. And if someone wants some help along with it, yeah, come see me.
Okay. I dig it. I actually want to talk to you about some more of that stuff later.
All right.
So, author, what'd you write? What do you write? What are you writing?
First book I wrote was the Long Range Shooting Handbook. You'll never guess what it's about. It's a very, very straightforward title on purpose. And I did that because I thought I did want to write a book before I died. Just because I thought that was a neat thing to do. So I sat down and I wrote that book based on some of the videos and some of the teaching I've done over the years. Is this actually segues perfectly from RocketFFL, because I'm the anti make things more complicated guy. And what I see, especially when it comes to long range shooting, is a few instructors out there that say, this is so tough, it's so complicated, we got to do all this math, and I'm so awesome, look at me, I can do it. That's not how you teach somebody something, in my opinion. The way I teach people is, you can do this, it's not that hard. Sure, the spin of the earth actually does matter on where the bullet's going to go at long range. But if you're worried about that right now, you're wrong. Right now, you should worry about proper trigger control, how to zero your rifle, good positions. We'll worry about that later. So I try to not stress people out about that. And I think that style resonated well with some of the videos I did for the NSSF. And I thought, I'll just take that, if that's a brand or whatever, and put that into a book. And I wrote the book, and no publishers wanted it. So I wrote the book, and I reached out to a bunch of publishers, especially firearms friendly or outdoors ones. And they either ignored me or wrote back, no thanks, not interested. I said, well, fine, I'm going to make my own publishing company. So I created my own publishing company, and I published the book myself. And I'm so glad I did, because it took off. And the lesson for everyone there is, don't get discouraged. I literally got the, nope, we don't want your book letters. And if I would have let that stop me, I wouldn't have ever put my book out there. And so I put my own book out there, and it's been 5 years now, and it's still the #1 best-selling book on Amazon in the shooting category.
Oh, that's awesome.
5 years later. And that's not because my book's that great. It's because everyone out there was so supportive and helped me out and likes the book and leaves good reviews.
What's the title again? Long
Range Shooting Handbook. And it's truly a beginner's guide. One of the nicest comments I got from it, you and I, when we met a couple weeks ago, we were talking about Kyle Lamb. He did a podcast with him, and he said the only change he'd make in the book was take the word beginner off the cover. That was a nice compliment, but it truly is a beginner's guide. It goes from the basics. And one of the small guarantees I would give people is, I don't care how experienced you are, if you're honest with yourself and me, you'll pick something up in there. Some tip or trick or some way to think about things that maybe makes it easier for you.
I dig it.
And then after that, I've published other books, compliance books, published ATF rules and regs and things like that. I wrote a children's firearm safety book that I'm still trying to figure out how to give away for free. So if I can get it printed and give it away for free to every gun store to put in the shopping bag of new gun owners, I would. That I don't write that book to make money. What was the intention?
Of course, it's firearm safety for children. Was the intention to get it out for free? Was the intention to get it distributed through one of the organizations like NSSF or something like that?
That was the intent. It just never took off. I reached out to them. They said they liked it and we were going to go forward with it. I just don't ever know what happened with it. I guess I need to follow up. It's 20 pages. It's very short.
It's something a parent would read to their kid.
Exactly right. So okay. I think there's great books out there. I don't have any criticisms of any firearm safety books for kids out there right now. I just know my kids. I have 2 kids. And if I read them a book that is clearly trying to teach them something or the rules, it may not soak in and they may not choose it to be read to them that night. So I wanted it to be a book. And I'm not a children's book author. It was my best attempt at it. It's called There's Only One You. And it's kind of rhymey. It's just a little story about children learning that mistakes with other things can be fixed, but mistakes with guns can't. So it goes through and it's, a girl telling a boy how she broke a vase and she thought her mom was going to be really upset, but they swept it up together and cleaned up the mess. And the boy said, yeah, I was helping do this and I spilled that and we cleaned it up. My dad wasn't mad. We cleaned it up. And it finally ends at the end. But a mistake with a firearm isn't so simple. You can't just, that's why the title's there. There's only one you, meaning you can't be replaced.
I like that.
Just kind of sneaks the firearm safety in at the end, and that's about it.
It's very sad how often children are killed with mom and dad's guns or seriously injured because the thing was in a drawer or in mom's purse or just loose. It's daily. It's daily that these kinds of things happen. It's horrible. Mm-hmm. And most of that, I love the idea of getting the kid to think about it. I remember being young and being at people's houses and like, hey, you want to see my dad's gun? And I was always like, no, I've seen guns and I don't I don't want to be around that crap. Like with some kid that doesn't know what he's doing, but mom and dads, man, you should write that book and just put better pictures in it for moms and dads.
So I don't know if it's in the book or in the description. I put in there that I hope it's really a lesson more for the parents than it is for the kids.
Okay.
It's a, hey parents. So I personally believe that a firearm should either be under my direct control or safely stored in a way that somebody who can't or shouldn't have their hands on it can get their hands on it. I personally hate it's not loaded, or they don't know where it is. Bull crap. The kids know where it's at. Or it's not loaded, or they can't do it, or they don't know how to operate it. I don't care. If they can put a finger on the gun, in my opinion, when they're not supposed to, I think that's a problem. So I love
1000% agree.
Yeah. So I have pistol lock boxes on my nightstand. I take my carry gun off, I put it in there, it closes. Not super high security, just enough to the kids not get to it, but it's a lock box that I can get to quickly. I think it's horrible when people aren't safe. That's why I'd love to have it given away. I'd love it to go in a new gun owner's bag that, don't worry, it's not loaded is not an excuse, or they don't know where it is, or it needs to be locked away. Yeah.
Just had we've got a Facebook group for instructors, and one of the guys posted something yesterday, basically how to store your carbine around the house with an empty chamber, with a loaded mag, like cruiser ready, but in a way that you could put a chamber flag in it and use like a rubber band that it wraps around a thing. And he's showing this video, and I'm like, well, why not just close the bolt and dust cover on an empty chamber if you're going to do that? But if it's not next to you or in your hand, then you probably should. Having that flag and a rubber band around it's not going to stop your kid from picking it up. Like that concept, trying to come up with a way to make a gun safe doesn't exist.
Yeah, especially if they're demonstrating it. Look how easy it is. Even a kid could do it. I mean,
wait. So all you got to do is stroke the bolt and it's loaded. Like, yeah, that's not okay.
So the other problem with some safety devices, I think, is that it gives a false sense of security to people, especially new gun owners. Because if they're going to do something, so I'm not trying to pick on this person because I don't know what the product is or the details, but just as an example, if you had some mechanism or some device that went in the gun that now it was quote unquote safe, now it's okay. Well, what are you going to do different with the gun now that it's okay that you weren't going to do with it before? Are you going to point it at someone? Are you going to let a kid hold it? What are you going to do now that's different? And if the answer is anything, then I don't know why you did that product in the first place, right? You shouldn't do anything anyway.
That gun behind you kind of illustrates like the old, very simple concept, right? Dad or grandpa have it over the door. They put the gun up over the door so the kid couldn't reach it, but dad or mom could, and you could look up at it. And by the time the kid got old enough to reach it, they were probably old enough to handle it. And it is such a blatantly simple thing. I get in, I don't want to say arguments, but people want to argue about that. Like the gun safes, that negates the purpose because now I can't get to the gun if I need it. Well, how about put a better lock on your door so you get some time to go, or get some outdoor lighting or a camera. It's one of these weird isms in this community of people where we fixate on like, I'd rather have instant access to my loaded weapon at all times and let my kids access it than change the way I think to not have one of my kids shoot themselves or somebody else.
Right. And is their tourniquet right next to their gun? Because if they can agree that medical safety is important too, then why isn't the tourniquet there? Why is it? You got to draw the line.
Shut up with your logic and reason. Yeah.
By the time we're getting to the gun, it's we've failed a few other areas first. But I still agree with easy access to it. I have been using I don't have a relationship with them, but Stop Box. Have you seen their box? It's like a plastic.
I love it. Yeah, I've got one. Yeah.
That's what I mean, where it's not super high security. I mean, you or I could snap it open quickly if we wanted to, but it's to keep the kids' hands off of it. And now I don't need to worry about batteries or getting into the deal. But yeah, I did a video with one of theirs and it got a lot of hate. I forgot what the term is, but the code on there, if you push it enough times in a certain way, you're going to figure it out. And like you said, the point is, a 5-year-old's not going to. A 20-year-old is going to, but the point is just to keep little kids' hands up. Well, and I use that one. I think it's great for my carry gun. So that means there's only a gun in there when I'm in the house with it. That's maybe not the best answer, but I'm not away from the house while someone's trying to get into that thing. And I even leave it open so I know, so it's easy for me to see. So I open it and lay it open, put my carry gun on, leave the house. That way, anyone that goes into my room can see that it's open. There's not a gun in there. It's and when I come home, I put the gun in, I close it. And the furthest away I am is the kitchen.
Yeah. So I like that. You've got young kids that could be grabbing on you when you're sitting on the couch and yanking on you. I'm careful about that because little kids' fingers are touchy and pry. You start lifting on things. I think we've hammered this point home. Yeah. Publish that book. I did. It's out. You can buy it now. The only reason it costs money on Amazon, the only reason it costs money is that's what Amazon charges me to print and ship the book. Gotcha.
So I just probably need to push that harder.
There's only one you.
There's only one you.
By author Ryan Cleckner.
And actually the kids in the book are my kids, the illustrations.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's I hired the illustrator and sent them pictures and said, this is what the kids look like.
I like that.
So it's kind of cool. So they get to see themselves in the book.
Why would Tucker Carlson have you on his show? What do you know that somebody else doesn't? Why do people have you come talk on news shows?
Because they have poor judgment.
That's a good one. So what people don't know about Ryan is he fancies himself funny. His deadpan's pretty good. I mean, that was a good joke. You like that self-deprecating humor.
I do.
But then you also have a very good picture of yourself where you're like this, and it says attorney, author, professor.
Well, do you want an attorney cracking a joke? No, you got to look serious.
Okay.
So I don't know. They reached out to me. I've had criticism from people that says, well, why are you on Tucker's show? How come you don't go on CNN? Because CNN hasn't asked me.
Well, let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
Let me rephrase that. Not what business do you have doing it? Of course, you have a lot to offer. What did they want you on there for as a subject matter expert? What did you bring to the table to the discussion?
First thing was about federal gun laws. So there's only a small handful of attorneys that focus on federal gun laws, ATF laws. So if you're looking for one, you're going to find, I don't know, maybe the 3 of us, potentially 4 of us that do it. I also do things like public speaking, or like you said, I'm a lecturer or a professor at university. I write books, I write articles. So I have a big enough head to appear on camera. So they reached out to me to put me on.
What do you lecture on?
Constitutional law.
So perfect time in history. Somebody commented yesterday. So our president said the Second Amendment's not absolute. And, if somebody just does a cursory Google search of are the Bill of Rights or are the amendments in the Bill of Rights absolute, you'll find literally any attorney that writes on it says, no, they're not.
Yeah.
And talk about what's interesting though is in this community of people, we fixate on, well, of course they're absolute. God took the Bill of Rights off of the mountain in Vermont. I think it was a mountain in Vermont, and George Washington rode down on his steed with the Bill of Rights on the tablets that were made of Kentucky limestone or something.
Well, there were 15, but he dropped one of the tablets. So he got left with 10.
They were very heavy. Benjamin, take these. So people assume that.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest enough to get myself in trouble, and I'm okay with that. So first, they're not our rights. This might seem pedantic to you or listeners, but the Second Amendment doesn't give you the right to anything. The First Amendment doesn't give you the right to anything. You have the right to free speech. You have the right to freedom of religion. You have the right to keep and bear arms because of the fact that you were born an American and given those rights by God. That's who gave you the rights and where you have the rights from. The Second Amendment does not give that right. The Second Amendment limits the government from infringing upon the right you already have. And if you read each of the 10, nowhere in there does it say that people have this right, or we shall give the people this right, or they now have the right. Every single one is written to say, the government shall not infringe upon the right to this, which means if you read it that way, which is how it's written, if the government's not allowed to infringe upon this right, that assumes you had the right before that amendment was written, which is true. So that's the first point to me is that I know it's an easy way to say it, but people say, our Second Amendment rights, I know I'm the lawyer that's nitpicking. We don't have Second Amendment rights. We have our own rights as Americans. The Second Amendment just limits the government from stopping us from exercising those rights. And they're not absolute because none of them are. Freedom of speech is not absolute. Freedom of religion is not absolute. I know everyone likes to use you can't yell fire in a crowded theater as an example, but that's not true. You can yell fire in a crowded theater. If there's a fire, that's when you can yell it. Mm-hmm. The other time is you can yell it whenever you want. And if someone gets hurt, you can get in trouble for it, but you can yell it. You're just going to be responsible for the trouble you caused. Examples I give are like crimes against children. It's a horrible topic, and it's a horrible thing that's, I think, happening in our country right now that I want to do everything I can to help stop. But pictures and videos and stories and things like that are arguably speech, because we've agreed on that as a country. I think it's perfectly okay for the government to say that you shouldn't be able to have certain types of pictures. That's limiting on someone's free speech. I think that's good. Sure. It's not absolute. I don't think you should be able to go defame people. You shouldn't be able to go as a business and go make up lies and say horrible things about another business to hurt a business. That would be defamation. That's a way that your speech should be limited. That's okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When I start the Second Amendment section of my class, so I teach, I haven't taught in over a year now. I've taken a long break. I need to get back into it. At the University of Alabama, down in Huntsville, Alabama, is where I teach it. I teach undergraduate classes. And when I get to the Second Amendment day, I only spend one night on it because there's so much to cover for the whole semester. I'll walk to one end of the whiteboard. I have a big lecture room where I have 3 whiteboards side by side. And I'll go all the way down to the left one. I'll draw a line, a vertical line. And underneath it, I'll write sharp pencils. And then I'll put my marker on the board and I'll kind of dramatically walk all the way down and draw a horizontal line all the way to the other end. And I draw a vertical line at the far right end, and I write tactical backpack nuclear weapons. And I say, show of hands, who thinks we should be allowed to have sharp pencils? Everybody raises their hand. Yeah. Show of hands, who in this classroom thinks they should be able to have a tactical backpack nuclear weapon right now in this classroom? Nobody raises their hand. I say, congratulations, we all agree on gun control. We just disagree on where to draw the line. And then so somewhere in the middle, I'll put different types of guns. I said, so we all just draw a line somewhere. We just have to debate where we agree on that line to be and why, and then we get into it from there.
That's, I think, a really great way to illustrate that visually and help people to kind of converse about it. Did you come up with that on your own, or did a professor show you that?
I came up with that one, yeah. Now, it may have been sparked by hearing someone talk about it, but I just liked the concept that I take the opposite approach of my students. So it's called the Socratic method, as I teach by asking questions. Mm-hmm. And so I'll give out a hypothetical. I'll say, if this, then this, then this, what do you say? Good or bad? And they say bad. Oh, okay. Well, what if I change this detail? You still think it's good? What about this detail? And I'll keep doing it till we find where they draw that line. And it's meant to get a common ground to start the conversation, because so many people start, I'm anti-gun. I'm not going to have this conversation at all. And I want to have an open dialogue with them. That's part of the lecture. I have a 3.5-hour lecture. It's a long time to be up there talking to college students on, each of my classes. And so when I go to start it, I want to have the dialogue open. So that helps them see we all agree on it. And if I gave you each a different color marker, you all would be able to draw a line somewhere on this scale. Mm-hmm. I just want to know why you drew the line there versus here. And then we get into the argument and start talking about why we have the right to keep and bear arms and what the point is and what should or shouldn't be reasonable restrictions on that.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm going to go back to the Bill of Rights, and you correct me as an attorney if I'm wrong. Something I am constantly reminding people of is those rights protect us from government, not from each other. We have tort law and things like that, right? For I can't say Ryan's limiting my First Amendment right because he pushed mute on my microphone. No, that's not what that's about. It's protecting me from my city council or whoever. It's why do we in this community of people that love guns, why have people like what you just explained in what we're talking about is pretty well understood concepts. How come we have folks that just think, nope, the founders wrote this. We have nuclear weapons now. It means that you should all be able to own nuclear weapons because that was what was in common use at the time. And I need a gunship. I need, all of these weapons. I want a tank. I should be able to protect my neighborhood.
Now, I do draw the line down there. So I do want my own tank. I do think, even though we agree on where the line should be drawn, I do draw the line pretty far to the right in my scale on what we should be able to have.
I think I do too. So I spent a lot of years working in a capacity of organizing grassroots campaigns to elect pro-Second Amendment, pro-freedom-loving candidates. We ran campaigns, we raised funds, and then I worked in our state capitol quite frequently, helping lead what was and is one of the largest Second Amendment rallies in the country, iGold. And some of the most vocal people are often some of the most uneducated people on these topics. They're passionate about it. Don't touch my freaking guns. That's can't articulate that. Keep going. That was where I'm going. And then you get to this point of where do you draw that line? And I'm with you. Yeah, I think we should be able to own weapons of war, because that is the point.
Arguably the only weapons that are probably protected by the Second Amendment from government intrusion are ones that are suitable for war. So when I hear anti-gunners say, you don't need that gun, you just need a wood-stocked hunting rifle. Well, arguably the whole reason for the Second Amendment was to keep the government from taking our guns that would allow us to overthrow a tyrannical government. So the only guns that it was written to protect are guns suitable for overthrowing a tyrannical government, which means only the scariest of our guns are what should be protected. And arguably, I mean, obviously I don't want any guns banned, but I'm saying when they try to do gun bans and say it's military grade, my answer is, yeah, that's the point. Those are the ones that should be most protected, because if that's the one that's suitable for overthrowing a government, then that's why it exists.
So really what it comes down to is now we have this deep philosophical divide of what we want for the future of our country. Do we want a country that holds these ancient, several hundred-year-old concepts dear and near to our heart, or do we want to create a new world where we blow each other and just try to be happy and pretend that the world does not have evil in it?
So I obviously want to hold on to the old concepts, but I don't even think they're that old just because they started back then, right? What I mean is, if we said only muskets were allowed or something like that, that would be an ancient concept because times have changed. But instead, I firmly believe that the Second Amendment protects us, again, to have the guns that could overthrow a government. So I think it protects us to have the exact same guns the military has. That's what the muskets were at the time. The musket was the military rifle. So I don't think we should throw them out. No. And if we do, I think that argument falls apart when you apply it to other amendments. So you think only muskets should be allowed? Well, then you don't have freedom of speech on your iPhone, because they didn't have iPhones back then, right? I think that falls apart. I think these are pretty simple, straightforward protections that we have. And you're right, they're only protections against the government. When I teach students at the very beginning, when I talk about if you have a claim, a constitutional claim, and you want to have a lawsuit, first you have to be harmed. There actually has to be some harm that is caused to you by this. It's called a standing. And second, you have to have a government actor. And so we go through a bunch of examples, like you said. You have to have some form of government restricting you from doing that. And I give the example of a mom with a child in a parking lot leaving a store. Maybe she's dragging the kid back to the car because the kid's throwing a tantrum and the kid's screaming something. And the mom says, "Don't you say that." And you hear the kid say, "But it's a free country. I can say whatever I want." No, you don't have freedom of speech with your mom. You don't have freedom of speech with your boss. You can't walk into your boss's office and yeah. And then when you get fired, say, First Amendment, freedom of speech. No, again, your freedom doesn't come from the First Amendment. The First Amendment merely protects you from the government infringing upon that freedom. You still gotta risk getting socked in the mouth or getting fired over what you say. You still gotta be responsible for the words you use. But the government can't say that you can't say something. And that's got tons of limitations. There's, for example, the Supreme Court has said that the government can require you to have a permit to protest. That might sound counterintuitive, but the reason they do that is as long as there's not a restriction on the content you're going to say. They say they want permits because they may not want 10 different 100-person groups in the middle of City Hall at the same time, because City Hall can't get their work done. So governments are largely allowed to do that. They're called reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions. So the government can say, no, you're not allowed to do protests at 2 a.m. with loudspeakers because you're going to wake people up. They're allowed to restrict the time. They can restrict the place you can protest, and they can restrict the manner in which you protest, but they can't restrict the topic. So if the government says, Mickey, you're not allowed to protest for guns, now that is an infringement on your constitutional rights.
Skokie, Illinois, not far from me. I've got family that lived there for years. The Nazi rally there years ago.
Yeah.
In the not too distant past. And that was, I think, something that perfectly illustrates what you're talking about. As you're talking and having this dialogue, something that comes to mind, I like to play devil's advocate and look at both sides of these discussions. Well, the founders were these, you brought up Socrates, as Bill and Ted. That's what I think.
Yeah, I remember that. Huh?
They looked at how these men, Plato and the other great thinkers, viewed the world. They also owned people, right? So we've got this juxtaposition of, well, we take these words that they wrote down and we enshrine them and say, let's never change them. But now our daughters can vote. And we're not allowed to own people and make them farm our land so that we can get rich off the work of others for free. So it's okay that things change in some respects.
Well, the things we're talking about, the Bill of Rights, were changes. That's why they're literally called amendments, right? That wasn't the original Constitution. Those were added later. So yes, it is okay that we can change and we as a people can change. But those first 10 were so, like, they're considered the fundamental rights. They're so important to us. I think that we should reserve them as much as possible. But it's a scary time right now. I'm scared for what's going to happen. I don't know where we're going to go as a country.
I think what's difficult, what I keep seeing is it's hard for people to even have a conversation. Mike Glover, Fieldcraft Survival, shared a couple screenshots yesterday. Today, for those of you listening, what's today, the 22nd? Yes, of April. So recent police-involved shooting, 15, 16-year-old girl is stabbing 2 people, actively trying to hurt and kill people. 911 is called that there's a person trying to kill people with a knife. Cops show up. She is shot and subsequently dies. So what Mike shared was a headline that basically was written to be sensationalized, to sensationalize the story. And instead of saying attacker stopped by police, it said something to the effect of like young child killed by cops on same day as the Chauvin trial, something like that, because it captured a headline. And then he proceeded to screenshot like a little bit of the actual facts of the case. And so I commented that something along the lines of like the First Amendment's been really twisted to what we feel where it is acceptable to say. And so I got attacked by a bunch of people that were very impassioned because they're concerned about this young girl, her family. And I said, it's horrible. I'm like, of course I don't think it's good that this girl's dead. It's also not good that she's killing people or was trying to stab people. It's also not good that that police officer was put in a position where he had to make that choice to take a person's life. Like, that's all really horrible. Point being, it was impossible to speak to anybody because they're so driven. We all do it, I think, at times. We're so driven by emotion that we can't compartmentalize, like, all right, what are the facts? My buddy Dutch from the unit that was just here, he likes to use the term due process. Like, can we use due process to draw out the facts of whatever it is we're looking at? Just comment on that a little bit.
Yeah, so the problem is 2 different conversations. One is, what do we wish would happen in the world? Yeah, of course we want rainbows and puppies and everyone to be happy. And I don't want anyone to die needlessly, except maybe the most heinous people. But I don't want any person in there to die. No, I don't want anyone to have to lose their life. And sure, if we had a magic wand and the situation could never have happened, I think we all would have waved that magic wand. But that's not reality. The reality is the cop was standing there after getting the 911 call with a decision. Either someone's dying. That one girl was going to try to kill the other girl with a knife, I believe.
Based on what we know.
Yeah, I believe. So the cop, as far as I know, had a decision. Someone's dying today. Right now, reality, someone's about to die. It's either going to be that innocent person that is about to get attacked with a knife and killed, or it's going to be the person trying to kill people. And the cop had to make a decision. And the cop, unfortunately, had the burden on his head to decide which of those 2 people was going to die. And so I asked people, what would they have preferred? Let's go back. Let's use that magic wand again. We're going to go back in time. What would they have preferred the cop do? Not show up at all? Would they have preferred that if the cop showed up and he watched it happening, that he allowed it to happen? and then we had somebody else murdered, would that have been okay? Would that have satiated people? Would people be happy now with police if they did nothing to protect the girl that was being attacked? And the first part where we all want puppies and rainbows, that's not reality. It's here we are. What did you want? If you didn't like that, what did you want instead? And I think that argument falls apart for most people, is I don't think they're honest enough to admit to themselves that no, they wouldn't have wanted the cop to stand by and do nothing and watch an innocent girl get murdered. Mm-hmm. No, they wouldn't have wanted the cop just not to show up at all. Well, then what options are we left with?
Mm-hmm. Well, he needs to have Krav Maga training, was one of the guy's comments, because he knew a guy, that I saw, that after 2 weeks of Krav Maga training, he saw this guy disarm a knifed subject in a bar. I was just like, I can't even talk to you, man. I can't even talk to you.
Yeah, I've also heard of people getting thrown from a car in a car accident because they weren't wearing their seatbelt and they survived. Mm-hmm. But I still wear my seatbelt.
Right.
The odds go for the safe option. And we both roll jujitsu, right? I feel I'm fairly competent, especially against someone that doesn't know jujitsu. I'm not going to go and get into a knife fight with somebody. Screw that. Matter of fact, I'm not even going to roll with somebody. Some drunk person trying to mess with me or my family, trying to get into a fight, even if I'm fairly confident that every time I could break their arm or tap or choke them out, I'm going to walk away. Mm-hmm. I want to go the other way and avoid the fight. But the cop doesn't have that luxury. We're paying that cop to be there to protect people. So either the cop does his job or the cop doesn't do his job. I think we're in a fortunate situation where police are going to start realizing that people aren't wanting them to do their job, and maybe they'll stop. That's bad. I think that's bad.
I've known a lot of men in the last 10 years, in the last year, pardon me, that have left the police service, gone on to sell real estate. One sells insurance now. One's just started a business doing like accident scene reconstruction, where like an attorney like you'd hire them and they'd come in and but they're fleeing in droves because of these scenarios. Yeah, it's nuts. The lack of due process. Do you think that's new? You know, it's easy for us to be flippant, I think, and we say, like back in the day, people were smarter, more thoughtful. I personally don't think that's the case. I think people are people, but you know, do you think this is new? Our inability to digest information before just blurting out opinions?
No, but I think we're getting the information faster, and so our opinions are more damaging. So I still think that humans are humans, and maybe we changed, maybe we didn't. I don't know. I don't want to blame that, though. I still think I am just as likely as other people to hear a certain fact pattern and interpret it in a way that I already believe. I'm a human being. I do that sometimes. Mm-hmm. So if someone gives me a fact pattern and I already come in with a bias on a certain view, I'm going to say, oh yeah, see, yep, look what happened. You know, look at this country that bans guns. And they had a firearms attack. See, that's what happens when you ban guns. It's very easy for me to do that. I think most people might do that. I don't know. But I think the difference now is we know about that shooting within minutes. We would have known that normally. So, you know, 50 years ago, we would have heard about it, but it would have been in the paper on the Sunday morning. And by then, the journalist would have had 5 days of facts to gather to put the whole story together. And, you know, CBS News yesterday, I think, it was either early this morning or yesterday, already ran with that story, and they played the 911 call and showed the video. Did you know about this?
I did not.
They edited out in both the 911 call and the video the mention and picture of the knife. So CBS News actively did this story and said, here's the 911 call. And they edited out the part where the 911 call said, she's trying to kill us. She's trying to stab us and kill us with a knife.
I hate that.
They took that out of the call. And then the video, they edited the video. So anytime the video went to the girl, they took out any scene that showed her having a knife. And so the same night of an event, you are piping that information into people's brains. And so we have the same human nature of believing the narrative that we want to believe. What else are people supposed to think? If you only saw that CBS piece, our conversation right now would be completely different. Our conversation right now would be, can you believe these people called the police for help, and instead of helping, the cops showed up and killed somebody? The only reason we know what we believe is because we know about the knife. Thankfully, we know those facts, but everyone that watched CBS only last night doesn't know those facts.
Is there anybody up in arms about that? Are there other outlets that are talking about shaming CBS?
There are no main outlets, no, because I think they they all have their own problems doing this, but a lot of social media is, you follow people on Twitter, or you see some, blogs I like to read or articles. But the problem is, I know I'm sounding like a conspiracy theorist here, but Twitter is already squashing stuff anyway. Facebook squashes stuff anyway. So you have, like the Federalist. I love to read the Federalist. I write for them every once in a while. They came out right away and said, look at this. And they like to put together an article showing CBS is deceptively editing what the real video was versus what they showed. But when they share it on Twitter, or I try to share it on Twitter just makes sure that nobody gets to see it. They suppress how it spreads, so nobody gets the word out there. And who are you going to believe, by the way? CBS News, when you're the average American sitting at home watching your news at night? Or are you going to be on Twitter parsing through 20 different articles, seeing what you want to believe?
Which I think begs the question of, are we responsible for what we take in and choose to accept as fact? Are we, because people make voting decisions based on this, they make buying decisions, they make decisions on how we educate our kids based on this stuff, and it is social engineering. I don't think it's a conspiracy. I think it's self-inflicted because we all buy into it. I say we collectively, not you and I or most of the people listening.
buy into some of it. I've caught myself before seeing something and said, oh yeah, I knew it. And then a day later, I find out the facts were different. And I have to, because I'm honest enough with myself, I say, oh man, I jumped the gun on that one, didn't I? I wanted to believe that one. It happens. That's also how social media works, is it shows us the news we want to see. If I, let's say, wanted to tweet about that CBS News thing, about how, look at this, look how deceptively edited this was. I'm not going to change a single person's mind, because anyone that doesn't agree with me isn't going to see my tweets.
Right.
It's only people that already agree with me. So it's
echo
this echo chamber. Yeah, exactly right. And I think the monetization of the media. So I'm against government media, government run state media, but at the same time, I'm maybe a little bit of a hypocrite, as I'm kind of against some of the private media too, because the private media, they're in it only to make money. And trust me, I'm a capitalist. I like making money, and I like people in the free market being able to make money. But the problem is, when the news media is now incentivized to make money, they're not incentivized to tell the truth anymore. So CBS News wants what? Eyeballs. They want eyeballs to see advertisers. So they're going to do this. And matter of fact, they have no reason not to deceptively edit it, because one, they just made all their followers more happy and they got more eyeballs for more advertising dollars. Two, here you and I are talking about them, which means people are going to go look it up and see more videos, and poorly written headlines that are clickbaity that make you want to click on them. The reason you click on them and the reason they want to do that is because you're one more view of their webpage to make more money on the advertisers. So this is bad because I'm just coming with problems and no solution, but I think that is one of the problems, is news media is incentivized to get eyeballs, not to tell the truth.
If any of you folks do go look this up on CBS, leave a polite comment saying, hey, we expect you to report this stuff factually, because this is not facts. Leave those comments. We'll see if they get deleted. I just recently read a great book on the Wright brothers, on the history of how they got to where they were, the history of their life. But it was very much like 5 years of their life. And something that was striking while reading it was the newspapers around the world. This is just 105, 110 years ago. The misreporting that was done just to sell newspapers. It's nothing different than today. And the author would find these headlines and read some of them. For example, they flew for 30 seconds for 500 feet. I'm just making up a number, but newspapers reported it was amazing. This plane soared like a swan to great heights, and just made shit up because it sold more papers, or it took off from the ground like a phoenix. Well, in reality, it was 3 feet off the ground,
downhill.
Yeah. And then once they began to get powered flight going, just the way that the reporter would be they would do these exhibitions in Europe and in America. They'd travel around and fly the planes, but the things that were written, the actual eyewitness accounts versus how the reporters drafted it, was just blatant bullshit.
You bring up a great point. I'm pretending like it's something new, and it's not. You're absolutely right. I didn't think about it that way. I remember Hearst, owning the newspapers, and Citizen Kane, that old movie, all that stuff about, you're right. They would sensationalize things to sell papers. And that's part of the danger of media. I think the most of what you know and most of what I know, we don't know firsthand. We know because we were told. Okay. We know because we learned it in school. We know because our parents taught it to us. We know because I'm telling it to you. I mean, I told you I'm an attorney. You probably believe me. You haven't gone and looked up my bar registration in Connecticut.
I actually did. I've got a copy of it.
No, I did not. So I'm just saying, I used to use this when I first came back from the military, and I was back at Arizona State University for my undergraduate, and people would argue about certain things, for the war, and I was younger and liked debating more. And I would use the argument that you don't know anything the media didn't tell you. Yeah, I do. I know it for a fact. And this is an extreme example, but I love taking things to the absurd level to prove a point. I say, oh, okay, you know things for a fact? Is there a country called Iraq? I said, of course there is. I said, how do you know this? How do you know that? It's because other people told you. I go, no, I've seen a map. The map was made by somebody else. Well, I heard him talk on the news. Somebody told you. I have a friend that was there. Somebody told you. Really, it's not. I don't believe this. It could be, it's just to prove a point, this huge conspiracy that we've all just lied to you, that there's even a country called Iraq, and yet you and your core believe and know that it's there, but you've never seen it yourself. And that's just to prove the point that, hey, the things we think we know, even though that was an absurd example, the things we think we know very often, in most cases, were what other people told us. And if you stop and are honest with yourself about that, now you start to question other things you're being told.
Yeah. I think that concept of question everything, in a sense, is valid. I think people take it too far. I had a family member that believes that the earth is flat. Literally, he's one of these flat earther guys, which, like, science is really cool because we can measure and quantify things and repeat them through experimentation, right? Like that is something you or I could do. We could go do experiments and verify that, yes, there's a curve to the earth. It is not flat. And that, I think, is something people often don't do. Do I need to do an experiment to figure out the makeup of air? No, I trust that I'm still alive and breathing. So I don't, there are some things a lawyer, I don't need to go to law school to trust you. So I'm going to pay you, you know what I don't know, and we can move on from there. But when we look at social media, well, I think perfect example, I put a post up yesterday. I've got a program that's like an instructor business development course. And I have many people that comment or message us. They want to do what I do. And I go, well, what is it that I do that you want to do? Like, you want to tell dick jokes. You want to, I make a joke about it. You want to grow some sweet salt and pepper hair. What is it you want to do? Well, I want social media. Well, that's not instructing. That's, theater. You can do that. And so people see what's online and they equate it to success somehow. I mean, I could probably start a social media page jumping around on a pogo stick with no pants on and get likes and views. But that's it. It is this new idea that if it's here on these screens, it somehow is real.
I like how you say that when you're asking what they want to do. And if you kept asking why long enough, I would assume they got down to the word happiness. So you would say, why do you want to do what I do? Well, because it looks fun. Why do you want to do things that are fun? That's a real quick, path to the happiness. The other one is, well, because you have a business and you're making money. Why do you want to make money? Well, so I can afford a house and not be stressed about the bills. Why do you want to have a house and not be stressed about your bills? Well, so I can spend more time with my kids and go on vacations. Why do you want to do that? Well, because it makes me happy. All paths on that Plinko board come down to being happy. Well, maybe there's another path to being happy. That's another thing too. I say that for college. I'm kind of the de facto one in our family or friends that say, hey, Ryan, will you talk to little Timmy or Jane and explain to them why they need to go to college? And I have a niece or a nephew in high school, or a neighbor or something like that. And the parents are often shocked when I first answer, you don't go to college. And the parents are, oh, no, this was a mistake. Abort. Why did we ask Ryan to say this? And I'll go to little Timmy or Jane and be like, if you want to go to college, go. If you don't want to go, don't go. And if you want a job where college is required, you foolishly don't want to take my advice and you want to be a lawyer, you better go to college, because they're not going to let you into law school unless you have your bachelor's degree first. Go. But if you just want to be happy and you want a career and you want to have a comfortable life, I have a pretty good argument that you do better not putting yourself into debt for 4 years learning about a liberal studies program. Because when I see tons of students getting out of college and they don't know what they want to do yet, their friends that started their own plumbing business are making much more money and have a much more stable lifestyle. So I just say, when people are reaching out to you, what do they want to do? They need to be honest with themselves, because maybe guns need to be their hobby. I have, because of RocketFFL, for example, so many people come to me, I want to make guns my business. I want to do all this. And I ask them why. And they usually say, because they love guns and they want a better career. And I try to talk them out of it to make sure that it's really what they want. I say, well, why can't you just love guns and have a career? Why can't you just be an amazing plumber that works your own hours and also likes guns as a hobby? They don't always have to be together. It's as you know, it's a hard industry.
Yeah.
It is a difficult industry to be successful in. And yeah, don't follow me. Don't follow Mickey. Just do what you want.
The line of questioning that you just went through is exactly how we start every course. Why are you here? And I'll ask, Ryan, why are you here? And the usual response is, I want to get better at shooting. What's better? Like, quantify it. Like, do you want to do what Ryan does and shoot a target 1,000 yards away, proned out with a optic mounted rifle and all that good stuff? Or do you want to be able to hit that same target with a 38 special revolver? Because that'd be really hard, and it's, you know, something possible, but got to go get Jerry Michalik, not me, to teach you that. Well, I just want to be faster with a pistol. And we start to like go into this. What's faster look like? What's the target size, distance? How many hits in what time frame? What gun? Are you awake or are you asleep when the shot timer goes off? Just, you know, keep asking questions. And then how will you quantify when you leave that you've achieved this objective? And you go deeper and deeper. And the point always comes out to, you're doing this not to get better at shooting. It's to protect yourself. Well, why do you want to protect yourself? Because I want to be alive. Why do you want to be alive? Because living's cool. You know, I don't want to be dead. And it's like, it's comical. It always gets a chuckle, but like, we're doing all of this, even what you and I are doing right now, because it makes us happy. It makes us, it's like, I wouldn't do this like, shit, I got to go and record another podcast. I wouldn't do it anymore. If I felt like that.
For sure. And I like when you bring up about better shooting to protect yourself, is I like to ask people why, when it comes to self-defense, do so many people focus on offense when the word defense is right there in the name? You know, they talk about being a better shooter, and the next question from there could be, well, how is being a better shooter going to help you protect yourself? Well, it's going to help you put more holes in the bad guy. Okay. What do you know about fixing the holes that are in you? You know, if you were sitting up, slumped against the wall, bleeding out and dying, looking at the guy that you killed first, is that a win? Are you successful, or are you still dying? You know, just those are the kind of questions I want to ask too. It goes back to our home defense kind of thing. You know, why do you want to be better with a gun? Because you want to protect your home better? Do you have an alarm system? If you don't have an alarm system, let's not talk about training with the gun first yet. Let's start with the alarm system, right? Or let's talk about, how do you avoid the fight? How do you not just put more holes in the bad guy? How do you keep holes from getting into you? Or how
Listen,
do you plug
pussy. Second Amendment says I can engage in this kind of fight, so don't ruin it for me. That's a mindset issue for sure that I think folks have. It's when do I get to use this gun, not should I or shouldn't I?
Yeah, it is. I don't want government testing for concealed carry, but I kind of do. I'm a hypocrite in a lot of these things. At least I'm honest about it. You know, I don't think the government should be able to get to say who gets to carry a gun. But at the same time, there's been a few people where I'm like, oh man, I wish that guy wasn't carrying a gun. So I'm a hypocrite in the middle there.
This will piss some of the folks off listening, but I think I agree with you.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough line to walk. I do believe in the right circumstance, you should be able to have somebody come spit on your shirt and or slap you in the face, and you be able to turn around and walk away while you're carrying a gun. Not always. I'm not saying if someone slaps you, you should walk away. I'm saying right circumstances, perfect scenario. Somehow you knew the person was being subdued by their friends. Somehow you knew you were leaving. Somehow you knew they were just drunk. Somehow you knew that's all they were doing. I don't know, but this magic scenario I'm coming up with, if you can't ever imagine that happening without you drawing your gun, I'm going to try and talk you out of carrying one. You know,
there's so many scenarios that I hear where the gun would have been justified and it wasn't used. In scenarios, I got two. Guy that owns handmade leather flip-flop company. I talked about this recently on the podcast I did with Cleared Hot. This dude's a BJJ stud. He's a thick, tough man, and some dude, wrong freaking target choice, comes up with a hammer to rob him. He's going to hit him with a freaking hammer, and dude like rear naked chokes him. He said, I heard popping sounds, which I'm guessing are vertebrae, and then smelled shit. You know, there's a perfect example where violence with a firearm would have been justified. If you're an attorney, yeah, the guy hit me with a claw hammer. Okay, that's pretty serious use of force. I recently had somebody brandish a weapon because they felt they were in fear from their life from a road rage type incident. They got arrested for unlawful use with a deadly weapon, arrested and charged with a class 4 felony. They truly felt that they were in fear for their life. They were in their car, didn't call the police and tell the cops what they did. The other guy called the cops, and you know how that goes. But like, people, I think, take that right far too flippantly.
Yeah, I have an unpopular view on that. I'm not for warning shots. I'm not for brandishing. I actually had one person one time in my family, so I won't say who it was, when I was at the range just running through some kind of half-speed drills on my own, hitting the timer, clearing my pistol and shooting, clearing my pistol, shooting, clearing my pistol, shooting. And this person said, don't you think that's a bad idea that you're practicing that the second you draw, you're shooting right away, that you're not, stopping to assess the situation? And my response was, no, I'm one of those people that believes the gun clears my holster when I've already decided the line is crossed or it's time to defend my life. I don't believe the gun gets out and is used for a tool because my life might be in danger soon. And so when I hear that scenario, I don't know all the fact pattern from it for the brandishing one you just mentioned, but I have a lot of questions. One is, well, if you're in fear for your life, were you able to call 911 while still keeping safely on the road? And if so, why didn't you? Why did you keep driving down that road? Could you have turned off another road? Could you have slowed down and let them speed away? Could you have done something else?
There was a few factors in here, such as dude followed this person into a parking lot, boxed them in.
Oh, yes. Okay.
So box them into a parking space. And so there was a lot of factors there that like, okay, that makes sense. But then it was like, why did you let them do that? Why? This was me. Why did you drive? Why didn't you drive to the police station, which I know is like a mile away? Pull in the parking lot. Why didn't you pull into the middle of a parking lot? Why didn't you call the cops on your way? Because we all have these phones now, and say, I'm in a, blue pickup truck and there is a green pickup truck following me, and this guy's trying to run me off the road, and I am in front of the hardware store on Main Street. Please send help. At the very least, you've set up a situation where you are showing that you're trying to do the right thing.
Yeah. And I give some sympathy to the person, because I don't know how many times in my life I look back taking a shower the next day wondering how I handled that conversation or situation wrong. And I could have done something else. So, nerves are going at the moment.
100%.
Just, I ask people to, if the line has been crossed, if it is in a situation where it is going to be your life or theirs, or life of your loved ones or theirs, or imminent bodily harm or theirs, then the line's crossed. Go time. Take care of it. Don't have to do it. Don't pull the gun out and say, get away from me or I'm going to shoot you, because now you might be assaulting them. You might be brandishing for them. Who knows what you're doing? Who knows what their friend just saw? Who knows what the undercover cop that walked around the corner now sees? You're the one holding the gun on them, and now you get shot. Who knows? So carrying a gun is a big responsibility. And if it's time to draw the gun because your life is truly in danger, then your life's in danger. It's very different than your life. You think your life is about to be in danger. Those are two different situations, in my opinion.
I think more people need to have these discussions internally and externally with friends and people that know what they're talking about to help them in that moment. It's interesting because you hear this discussion you're having right now. Folks will say, well, if I draw and then the person stops, yeah, great. Then you stop. Like if you're able to process inside of that time frame. But to your point, if you drew the gun, then you are in a situation where somebody is in fear for their life legitimately.
Yes. Yeah. Not about to be in fear. Not that guy was getting aggressive and he was big and I might have been in fear for my life in the next minute. Well, try and get out of the situation. But once you're there, you're there. Yeah. And you need to live with that too. I don't care how bad the person is. You're gonna have to live with the rest of your life. You took someone's life. It's also for you. You pull that gun out, you better be prepared to lose your house, to lose all the money in your bank account, maybe lose your freedom, and have to deal with taking another person's life. Now, for me, I'm willing to do all those negative things to protect one of my children. I'm okay with that. I'm okay to do that to keep my children's dad around if the situation's that bad. But that's the reality now. That's why, things like CCW insurance exist. That's why these lawsuits exist. Is when you pull that gun out, you better know for sure that you're willing to take another human being's life and that you're willing to accept all the consequences that come from that.
Which are heavy.
Yeah. Or what happens if that person had a gun? You know, I hear this example of, hey, Ryan, what if you're getting into your truck and some like 16-year-old kid came up behind you and stuck a gun in the small of your back and said, give me your keys. What are you going to do?
Give him my keys.
Yeah. And they're like, what do you mean give me your keys? Well, first off, shame on me for allowing myself in that situation where I allowed someone to get behind me and put a gun in the small of my back. But guys, I'm not going to spin around and pretend I heard a shot timer buzzer and try and outgun this person. Who knows what's going to happen there? But maybe that 16-year-old kid is just going, please, 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 just give me the keys, just give me the keys, just give me the keys. And now me spinning around and drawing a gun, he's already got the jump on me. He's already got the gun pointed at me. Who knows if as I'm turning and drawing my gun, I now just changed his mindset from please just give me the keys, please just give me the keys to, oh crap, I better shoot him or he's about to kill me. Maybe I got shot. Now we can both imagine the scenario another way where maybe I should have drawn. I don't know. I'm just saying, please, if you're carrying a gun, be ready to be insulted or humiliated or maybe even be shoved and still not draw the gun in the right situation if you can get yourself out of it. I
agree. Claude Werner, the tactical professor, recently published an article. He's a Green Beret, super sharp dude, and he is talking about the mission for us law-abiding people is to go home, which oftentimes is breaking contact. So he uses a lot of infantry terminology and diagrams in this article, talking about like, hey, we're getting the best thing for us to do here is not die in this ditch. It's break contact and get away from the enemy that's trying to hurt us or kill us so we can regroup, fight another day, etc. And again, that's like a predetermined thing. If this and this happen, we're going to go that way and get picked up by the helicopters. Instead, too many of us, I think, approach this. If this and this happen, I get to shoot somebody. Instead of how the do I get away? I was at a I don't want to say his name, but a friend of mine who's a very experienced black belt in jiu-jitsu. I've been with him like 4 or 5 times. No joke. This dude completely did nothing, and strangers have tried to start a fight with him, and it's hilarious. Like, are these people just it's usually like drunk idiots. Like, are they dumb? And nothing happened ever because this dude perfectly handles it.
Well, Chuck Norris walks around with 3 bodyguards at all times because everyone wants to pick a fight with Chuck Norris.
Okay.
When they get drunk, because why not?
That makes sense.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
No, but it's like sometimes it's not just that they know who he is. It's also just maybe dumb luck, but he handles it beautifully. Like, one, he doesn't need to prove anything. But one time, I mean, he would have been completely justified in using force. Didn't have to. But his demeanor is just beautiful. Like, well, we don't want to do this. Like, I got a nice shirt on. You got a nice shirt on. We don't want to get like mess our buttons up. Just, completely diffuses these people. Whereas so many other, especially younger guys, are just like, yes, it's the go switch. And I think when we're younger, that's definitely easy.
It is. Well, I also think people don't know what happens when people get shot. They see too many movies. And when the bad guy gets shot in the movie, a bullet goes into the bad guy's chest and the bad guy falls over immediately and dies and drops the gun. I think people don't realize also that, let's say someone is coming at me with the claw hammer, or who knows, with another gun. They're coming out with another gun. And somehow I'm able to get the jump on them. I draw my gun. I can't escape. I draw my gun and I shoot them. And I shoot them and I have a magic bullet that erases their heart and their lungs. It vaporizes their heart and their lungs completely. I didn't win the fight. That person's got a good 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds until they're actually dead. I think people see the movies and don't realize, I get to pull the gun, bang, bang, all right, fight's over. And they don't realize that person with that baseball bat or the claw hammer, the machete, is still going to keep fighting you no matter how much you shoot them, depending on where you shoot them. And you still need to learn how to fight. So we're talking about grappling. Okay, so guys sprinting at me, I pull out my gun, I shoot him twice in the chest, and now he hits me because he doesn't just stop running like he does in the movies. He's going to get shot twice in the chest, and he's going to keep running and barrel into me. And now we're on the ground, and now we're fighting. And just because I got the 2 shots in his chest doesn't mean I win. I still got a guy on top of me with a claw hammer hitting me with it. I need to learn how to defend myself. That's something else I think people need to realize, is that the fight doesn't magically end when the gun gets pulled out. You still now need to render first aid to your loved ones and yourself. You still might need to deal with somebody who doesn't have a heart anymore, but has a good 30 seconds left to fight in them. What's going to happen then?
Yeah. Yeah. It's, again, begs the question of what people's goals are. Are they doing these things? Somebody shared with me last night, there's a private group of friends of mine on Instagram that are all professionals. A couple of them are grandmaster level shooters. A couple of them are jiu-jitsu black belts, all instructors in some form or another. And one of them shared a Instagram page of a nice young man that's got tons of beautiful photos of guns and shooting and different stuff. And the young man had reached out looking for some advice on like growing his social media and to me and another guy. And I'm like, what's the goal? And he loves guns, but, and the thing, I don't want to comment too much because I don't want people looking him up, but he's all about like the EDC lifestyle, everyday carry, sexy knives and, cool holster pictures and all that. It's all cool stuff, but he's never had any training. Has never done any type of grappling or martial arts skill, no medical training. So it's like, well, are you really into this concept of protecting life and limb and liberty, and these tools are part of that? Or are you really just into guns and knives because it looks cool? And
which I'm not against. Be into it.
I'm not either.
Cool. That's fine.
I'm not against it either. But I always tell guys like that, like my friend Z Durham, that's the guy you're training to fight. Green Beret, that's a BJJ black belt that's made out of muscle and frickin' steel. That's the guy you're training to beat. And that dude's going to take your gun away from you and beat you to death with it.
Yeah. Or get shot and still beat you to death.
Yeah. And those cute little pictures don't mean anything to that dude. That dude's determined to go home. Well,
I think 86% of people that get shot by guns survive.
Yeah. I talk about that in class. I ask people, I go, how many do you know the statistics? And 20%, 50%, 8%, 0%. It's like, no, man, it's even in the head in first world countries where there's a trauma center nearby. I think it's like 8% of people that are shot in the head was the last statistic that I read. I mean, that's still kind of a big number.
Yeah. And are you prepared? Did you just practice to pull the gun out and pull the trigger twice?
Yeah.
And think your problem's over? Or are you ready for the aftermath? Are you ready for their friends? Are you ready for stuff like that? Or stay away from the situation? I don't know.
How long were you a sniper?
Not very long at all. So I was only in the military for one enlistment.
Okay.
So I was in for, 4.5 years, something like that. It sounds way cooler till I talk about the short amount of years. Now in 1st Ranger Battalion, that one enlistment was a lifetime. I feel like the amount of training in schools and deployments and everything we got to go on felt like an entire lifetime. And now that I'm 41 looking back at it, I'm like, oh, it's just a blip on the radar. It was just 4 years. I started off in the line. So I was a regular Ranger fire team doing what any other Ranger would do. So flying around in helicopters or jumping out of planes and kicking doors and doing stuff like that. And then about halfway through, there was a slot opened up in the sniper section. There's only 6 snipers at a time. At the time, they've reorganized it since, but there's only 6 snipers at a time. And one of the snipers was getting out, and they opened it up, said, hey, who wants to go over to the sniper section and try being a sniper? Me. So I had to work to get over there, and I got over there, and immediately, I think day 1 or 2, they said, hey, you're going to SOTIC. And I said, what's SOTIC? And SOTIC is the Special Operations Target Interdiction Course. It's the premier sniper school in the world. It's like the finishing school that regular snipers go their whole careers waiting to get to. And I got to go on day 2, which made me real popular. Yeah. Everyone else hated my guts. Yeah. Because there were guys there that were, waiting for years to go to that school. And then I get to go right away. So my first time firing an M24 was in SOTIC. So I had to show up pretending like I knew what I was doing. So that's a 2-month course on range 37 in Fort Bragg. And that was an amazing start to it. And then I was a sniper since then, deployed twice to Afghanistan as a sniper. Got to do all sorts of cool schools and medical training, and it was awesome.
So that's where your long range background came from. So there's some great videos that you did with NSSF, and I think maybe some others on zeroing, and I haven't seen them all, but they're very well done, and you're very articulate, and I think you described it earlier. You break it down quite simply, do this, then do this, and here's why.
So I learned that after the military, though. So the military still teaches things wrong. A lot of it. They do. They still teach things the old way or the way that everyone else told them. And I learned a lot, and I had a lot of experiences, but I also learned why things didn't work, or things didn't work great for me necessarily. And I learned most about what I know about long range shooting teaching. So when I left, I started working for a government contracted sniper school. And teaching, I think, is when you really learn something better. When I figure out a way to explain it that it clicks in someone's head, or I figure out a way to show somebody what they're doing wrong. Because it's easy to say, shoot better, shoot more accurately. Hey, you see what you did there? That was wrong. Don't do that. That's not teaching. Diagnosing someone's trigger control, or diagnosing what they're doing with their position, or helping people understand the math to where it's not complicated. Most people's eyes cross. You start talking minutes of angle and mils and external ballistics. Trying to make that simple and seeing how that works. So the trial and error of years of doing that is really what helped me learn how to distill things down or see people doing things. That's where I stopped believing in cold bore. In the military, you swear by the cold bore shot. We would do these. There's a whole lot of
tell the listeners, viewers, what that means.
All right, I will. And I'm going to tell you what category it fits into first. It fits into what I call sniper voodoo. There's some things that people don't really understand, but they just consider it this mystical voodoo. And you sprinkle some sniper dust on your rifle and you pray to the sniper god and you'll be able to do it. And people just believe it because they like this folklore of it. And one of them, I believe, is folklore. Most people disagree with me, is the cold bore shot. And that is the theory that the first bullet out of a cold or clean barrel of your guns, the first round you fire that day, is going to be in a different spot on the target than the rest of the rounds you fire that day. Well, I was told that over and over in the military. I was told that by the same guys that explained to me what minute of angle were. So why wouldn't I believe them? They're the authority. They're teaching me. It goes back to our conversation that we know most of the things just because we're told it. So of course I believe it. And I start seeing it out on the range and I realize, actually, this is a cold shooter, not a cold bore, not a cold barrel. It's a cold shooter. It started not making sense because I started questioning, why would the steel in the barrel when it was cold make the bullet go that way? But from bullet number 2 to bullet number 1,000, they all go here. Isn't the barrel warmer on bullet 3 and even warmer on bullet 5? How come it doesn't keep walking around the target? That doesn't make sense. Why does it just make that shift? And to fix this cold bore theory, this is on deployment. We would do this. Real combat, we would leave the gates and we would fire 2 rounds into the berm. So our
barrel up.
So it was warmed and fouled. So it wasn't too clean. People are like, don't clean it because then it's too clean. Well, if getting dirtier makes an effect, well, then isn't the difference between shot 5 and shot 50 and shot 100 and shot 500 also going to make a difference? At least if we clean it, we're going to keep the number as close to 0 as possible so we can keep it more consistent. So we would do these things. I started noticing it with shooters, and in this school, we started teaching people. Once I had them in my course for maybe, not my course, but I was teaching 5, 7 days, 8 days in the course. I now know they can shoot a group consistently. I now know that shooter, if I let them lay in the prone in the morning, can shoot a better than 1 minute of angle, which is better than an inch at 100 yards, 5-round group. Okay, so at least I now know we have a baseline. I would then start having them clean their rifles, not only every night, but I'd have them clean it again in the morning to make sure the barrel is perfectly clean. And I'd have them walk out and shoot their 5-round group. And I would disprove the cold bore theory because I'd have them warm up first. So we would have them dry fire their guns multiple times. And I'm big on having people call their shots, which is being honest with yourself where the reticle was when the shot actually broke, when the gun went click, when you're dry firing. And after they get 5 perfect presses, so after practicing as many times as they need, but after they get 5 where they go click, yeah, it was perfect, then they can load and shoot their group. And every single one of them, maybe 98% of them, 98% of them across the board over years had no cold bore shots anymore. So I think it's easy for us to shank that first shot when we get to the range because we had a big burrito for lunch and we just chugged a coffee and we're thinking about something at work. And we don't want to blame ourselves. We want to blame the equipment. And so we call it that. So that's just one of the myths I like to disprove.
I like that. I've actually talked to somebody else about that similar phenomenon, and they agree with you. He's a SEAL, older dude. He didn't explain it as in depth, but he just said the shooters suck. That's what he said, is something like that.
Or I see people write it down too. I don't like writing everything down. Snipers love to get the minutia of all these details, and I'm okay with writing things down as long as it matters. So if you're going to write something down in your notebook, in your dope book, in your sniper data cards, that's great as long as you can do something with it. Okay. So if you're going to write down where your cold bore shot was, there are snipers that say my cold bore shot is always 2 inches low and a 1/2 inch right. Really? Show me. It never happens. Every time I challenge somebody, oh, really? Well, we just got to the range. Go ahead and take your shot. It's never where they said it was. Like, you guys are putting way too much weight on something that doesn't matter.
Just learn to shoot better.
Yeah, or they're writing down, my joke and I put in the book is they're writing down the mineral content of the soil. What are you going to do with that information? Right? Next time you're out here, what are you going to do with that? Or if you're not able to access that or make a change in your behavior, then why are we worrying about that? Why don't we just worry about shooting better? Yeah.
That's interesting. Seems like a lot of times I've noticed as the this explosion of people instructing various shooting practices has taken place, we need to be continually validating our right to be there. You know, there's a lot. Why come train with me? Well, I've got, I talked to you about the soil composition. Nobody else talks about that shit. Yeah. But like most of the stuff is not that hard, but there's correct ways to do things and incorrect ways to do things. Like, why can't we just talk about that? Like, let's just discard the incorrect ways.
Yeah.
And it's
actually harder. We make it simpler by focusing on only what matters, but that's actually harder for most people, is why they won't do it. It's easier for someone to sit on their couch and pontificate about the spin of the earth, about why they're not shooting well or what gun they need to buy better. It's hard to go out and practice. It's easy to talk about a hunter wanting to get this gun because it is 12 ounces lighter than that gun. That's easier to do than it is to go get on the treadmill and lose 10 pounds on our own body. That would make us way more effective as a hunter to get in better shape, but it's easier to go after the equipment. So I think that's part of what it is. I think it's easy to pull out the ballistic calculator and geek out on the stuff. It's hard to do it the right way. And it all breaks down. I encourage you to do this whenever you get long range guys, especially that geek out on all this. Just ask them, so what? Well, the spin of the earth does this, and it's going to move the bullet this far this way, depending on what latitude line I'm on and which direction I'm facing, which is true. And I like to go, so what? They go, well, you got to take that into account. And I go, really? And we're at the range, and I point at the target. See that 500-yard target right there? Can you hit it for me? They go, yeah. What exact azimuth is that? I don't know. What latitude line are we on right now? I don't know. Let's say I told you the azimuth and the latitude line. What's the correction you would make based on that for the spin of the earth? I don't know. Well, then how about we just shoot the target? Yeah, let's just do that. If that really has no effect on what you were going to do, then why don't we just shoot better? Go ahead. I was going to say shooting tiny groups is another thing. People want to get these little tiny groups. I'm not a great group shooter. If I shoot below an inch to 100, I'm happy. 1 inch per 100 yards means I can hit a 10-inch circle at 1,000 yards. Who wouldn't be happy with that? Yeah. I'm more impressed being able to run with my rifle, lean up against the bumper of a car, and hit a 5-inch circle at 500 yards. I'm way more impressed at the ability to do that than to shoot a little tiny ragged hole at 100. But again, the thing I just mentioned about just getting good at fundamentals of shooting and unstable positions and more tactical shooting, which is shoot that target now, is a lot harder than laying on your belly, sipping on your coffee, getting the math out and shooting pretty little groups and posting them on Instagram. It is like showing off some cool boxing skills on a heavy bag versus standing in front of an opponent. It's cool, but it's not as applicable. In our rifle course, I don't do long range stuff, but we do a carbine class. I call it farm kid shooting. I have a 5-inch swinger plate, and I make people go from the 0-yard line, sprint back to like between 100 and 150 yards, depending on the amount of space we have. And they get one try, sprint it, and I run with them all, and they got to prone out with drop the mag. They're all shooting ARs for the most part, magazine to the dirt, no bags or anything. It's a 5-inch freaking target. Most guys are running just red dots, and now guys are running the little optics, but people are like quite amazed that the gun is really capable if they just hold it right and press the trigger, like you said. But dudes I allow them to do that previously however they want, and guys are gutting sandbags, and it's like, really, you need bags to shoot a 5-inch target 100 yards away? Just shoot. Yeah, just shoot. Yeah, I like to say, if there's a mythical scenario ever existed where there's like a sniper counter sniper scenario in this, post-apocalyptic world, and I'm going up against another sniper, I hope he's got his wind meter and ballistic calculator and bags out, because I'm going to shoot him through his wind meter, right? Yeah. If I'm wrong on my dope, I'm going to hit 2 feet low, reload, aim 2 feet higher, and pull the trigger again and be done. Yeah. And that begs the question again of what is the goal? Like you and I both hunt. I don't want to be good at shooting where I have to have my wind meter and all that stuff. It's cool to have, but I want to be able to be wherever I'm at, use a fence post or the earth or my shooting sticks or a tree branch or
if I have to stand and take the shot to harvest the game. And if I'm not going to have all these other apparatus, that's not going to help me. Why would
it's a great way of saying it. What's the point? Yes. For why are you doing this? If you want to shoot better groups because you want to get into bench rest shooting, well, then shoot better groups.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to get better at hunting, the only reason you should be on a bench is confirming the zero-year rifle. After that, you better not take any more shots on a bench because there's no shooting benches in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
Every shot you should be taking from here on out is leaning up against a post or on a knee or something like that, because that's the only way you're going to get better if that's what you want to get better at.
Yeah, there's no bags, no freaking nice, beautiful rollout mats, no freaking...
Or doing realistic drills. So, okay, you shot a pretty group, done. I don't see any more groups. Stop shooting groups. From here on out, I want you to put a paper plate at 200 yards, and I want you, somewhere other than the prone, to take a shot, reload, and take another shot and see how fast you can do it. So we're talking like split times with a bolt gun. The reason that matters is, can you find the target again? Are you good enough with your rifle and scope that you can find that paper plate again because you got knocked off of it with the recoil? Was your position stable enough? Because sometimes you got to shoot twice at an animal. That's way more realistic. Hitting anywhere on that paper plate twice is way better than shooting a group and not being able to hit the paper plate at all, because you're not used to it. Or jumping jacks. Stand up and do 20 jumping jacks, then grab the rifle, lean up against a fence post, and hit the paper plate. That's called a win. Pretty groups, turn into missed animals.
I like that. I'm going to incorporate that.
Why don't people reload their guns? That drives me nuts too. Sorry, one more and I'll stop with all these.
No, I'm down with it.
I hate bolt gun shooters that treat the bolt gun like it's not a gun. Nobody would take a pistol course, shoot a drill, end up with their slide locked back on the pistol, lower the pistol with the slide locked back, admire their target, put the gun in the holster with the slide locked back, talk to their buddies about the target, and then walk away from the line. Everybody knows to get the gun back in the fight. I think a bolt gun is no different, especially when you're thinking military, police, sniper, aspect. I'm big on reloading the gun and get the gun back up and running. And so I do that with students a lot. They'll shoot a shot and they'll be sitting there admiring their shot, and I'll come up and lean down to them and whisper, "Why is your gun empty?" Like, bad guys have friends. Sometimes the animal needs shot again. That's another thing. Shooting groups. If you watch my videos, you'll see I reload with authority on my guns. As soon as I shoot, that recoils into my shoulder, I am running that bolt and getting the gun back into the fight, because I don't want to reposition and refind the target with an empty gun. What's the point of doing that? If I find the target again, I still now got to reload and then I'd rather find the target with a loaded gun. So it's just simple things like that and changing people's mindset. Stop shooting groups on paper from a bench. Start doing these more practical things. I think it'll make you a much better shooter.
I like that. You're an avid hunter. Do you only feed your family with wild game, with game that you've harvested yourself?
I try. Yes. Yeah. So I like to say yes, but I'm sure there's times something else gets snuck in there. Like we might have had salmon the other night and I didn't catch the salmon. Sure, or if I go out to eat, of course. But yeah, predominantly it's game meat.
Kid, I caught these hot dogs.
Exactly right. Yeah, I grew these macaroni myself. Yeah. So, but for meat, we are a vast majority of our meals are all game meat. Free range, organic meat that I get to go harvest, and I hunt so much though that we can't even keep up with it. So I like to give a lot away and share it with other people.
What's your favorite game to hunt?
Elk.
No hesitation.
It's the best.
What do you like it because of the scenery, the animal? Do you like the way the animal tastes? What do you like about elk
all the
hunting?
above? I think it's my favorite tasting game meat. It is the scenery and the season. It's the animal, man. By far my favorite, because I'm with my kids. You're always asking what's your favorite animal or things like that. It's always elk. I hunt a lot of animals, and in plenty of situations, I told you this story, which we won't tell again, but I hunt enough. I don't get buck fever. I don't get excited necessarily too much. I'm talking like, heart rate type excited. But when I see an elk, when a big bull comes walking out behind a cedar tree and he doesn't know I'm there and he bugles, it's everything I can not to crap myself. I'm so excited when that happens. And I see the breath coming out of his mouth. I mean, my legs will start shaking. My heartbeat will go so much. I can hear it in my breath. It's, pumping in my neck so much. I love the adrenaline. I love how the animals behave. I love how they look. I love the, either trying to bugle or call them in or try to find them. I live in the South, and hunting here is a little different than out West. Deer hunting here is typically sitting in a tree stand at the end of a field. I'm not against it, but that doesn't do it for me near as much as putting on a backpack and walking up and down hills and glassing for animals and finding them. And they're massive. Elk are a lot bigger than people realize.
Yeah.
So going to find these massive animals and maybe giving a bugle or a cow call off and hearing something bugle back and hearing them getting closer through the woods and knowing this animal could just end you if he wanted to. I don't know. It's pretty amazing.
What got you into the elk hunting?
My dad, growing up in Arizona. Yeah,
okay.
my whole family, we're a bunch of hunters. We're mostly bow hunters, though. So most of the reason I rifle hunt now is because the industry we're in. It really is for, unfortunately, social media or articles or things like that. You know, I went to the Czech Republic and had an amazing hunt, and I wrote an article for Recoil magazine about it. Well, you don't write an article for Recoil magazine necessarily with a bow.
Yeah.
Right. So I rifle hunted. That's what I do. So what my passion though is archery elk hunting. That's really where my passion's at. But because the industry I'm in, it does better for me to test out a new company's rifle. You know, my last elk hunt, I took Savage's new rifle out.
Okay.
So I took that out to try it on there. Or when 300 PRC just came out, I took that ammo out to shoot an elk. So it's typically firearms, but we grew up archery elk hunting in Arizona.
What's your favorite caliber for elk?
Oh, I don't know if I can answer that.
No. If you had to pick just one.
I've been using 6.5 Creedmoor a lot lately for elk.
Yeah.
I think my past 3 or 4 elk have been 6.5 Creedmoor. I don't know if that's the reason I hesitate saying it's my favorite is I don't know if it's the best. My favorite, I can say for cartridges, my favorite light medium cartridge is now 6.5 Creedmoor. I was a slow adopter of it. It took me a long time to come over to the dark side of it, but now I love it and I'm on board with it. And my big boy cartridge, I love 300 PRC. I think that's the best all around awesome big cartridge. I love it. So
what's kind of the basic ballistics of that 300? How heavy a bullet are you talking about for hunting?
215 grain.
And how fast is it getting pushed out of a hunting gun?
I don't know off the top of my head for it. It's a 300 Win Mag plus about 20%. That's what it is.
Okay. All right. Okay. That's a big boy.
Yeah. So it's the bolt face is the same as the 300 Win Mag. So if you take a 300 Win Mag piece of brass with the belter on the bottom, it has the belted brass, and you just made the cartridge case the same width as the belt. So instead of dropping back down narrower after the belt, if it just stayed the same width as the belt, that's the 300 PRC.
All right.
But it looks like someone put a 6.5 Creedmoor in a copy machine and just increased the size. The dimensions, the neck length versus the shoulder versus these proportions are all the same, just graduated bigger. I think they should have called it 300 Creedmoor, honestly, because that's really what it is. So it gets all the benefits of it, works great in all sorts of rifles. Twice, we talked about this yesterday. I was out with some friends shooting, and these same friends, in 2 different occasions, we were able to hit mile targets with 300 PRC that we couldn't hit with 338 Lapua. And 338 Lapua is much more powerful, much bigger, seen as more of a super long range, awesome long range round, but it's just not quite as efficient. And I'd much rather have a smaller, less expensive, lighter 300 PRC that was able to hit the mile targets better than something bigger.
That's cool. Where do you shoot
elk with one too? Yeah.
Where do you shoot around you that you've got mile long targets? You got a range down that way?
We do. So there's the Tennessee Game and Fish has a new range they just opened up recently that they had us out to go check, and they have steel out to a mile, which is awesome.
Awesome.
They actually put too big of a target at a mile though. They had us out there to ask us our feedback when they're making the range, and they have about the size of a sheet of plywood at a mile, maybe a little bit bigger. And the steel, I swear, is an inch thick. And so you can't see it move.
And you don't probably hear it.
No. So it's so good of a target, you can't tell you hit it until you drive down there and see the bullet holes on it.
Okay.
Also Strategic Edge. It's a private range that's kind of a long range mecca down here in my neck of the woods. We have targets out to 1250.
Okay.
Which is getting pretty good. And it's so nice because the people that run it are amazing. There's good people out there. And they have golf carts there ready for you. So you just take the key, you just zoom down to your target. They have cameras on the target, so I'm spoiled. And then yesterday I was out at just a private piece of property, some farmland.
My favorite way to do it.
Yeah, some private property.
Yeah.
I'm a shooting snob enough that I don't trust other people. I don't like public ranges, and I know that makes me a snob, but I don't know what some Yahoo is going to do. And if I'm there, I'm usually there to teach someone else, a friend, or introduce someone to shooting, which means I don't want other people coming and giving their opinions, or I'm there to work. I'm there to get data on a rifle or zero something, and I'm not for that, but it's really mostly for safety. So I enjoy shooting with other people. I get scared sometimes the day after Christmas at a public range when everyone brings out their new toys and they're flagging everybody with their guns.
I just had a relative that's new to shooting who I had told be leery of public ranges, and they went to one. They were telling me and another guy, and I immediately said, "Did you bring your body armor?" And he goes, "It's funny you say that, because after I was there, I wanted to ask you about body armor if I go back." And I'm like, I'm like, just don't go back, man. Just don't go back. That's funny.
I mean, that's all you got. Do it. I don't want to, I am very blessed and I have access to these places, and you may not, and that shouldn't be a problem. Just be careful when you go.
Yeah.
Just keep your head on a swivel. If I go to a public range, I like going with someone else. If you and I ended up having to go, for example, and they call the range cold, I would ask one of us to stay back at the line while the other one check the targets.
Yeah.
Because somebody is going to go up and touch their gun when they shouldn't.
Picks their gun up. Yeah. Hey, put your gun down, man.
Put it down. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, scary stuff. Hey, I appreciate that you took the time to visit with us. People, if they Google your name, they'll see different articles. You just mentioned Recoil. You've written for other magazines and things of that nature. You've got all kinds of video content out. Gun University. I don't think we talked about that at all yet.
Well, thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, talk a little bit about Gun University.
Gun University was my buddy, which you've met, Dave.
Yep.
He helped me do, because he brought up, he goes, "Ryan, you do so many different things. Look at your introduction of me." He goes, "You do too many different things, and no one can find you at one space online. You have these different websites, and how do you tell people where to go?" He goes, "You need a hub." He drew them all out on a whiteboard, and he drew a hub in the middle and put a question mark and said, "You need this hub here that can host, that's related to everything you do. That's the one spot everyone can go to find things." And as he started getting more and more into the firearms industry, we also realized that a lot of reviewers, not all of them, but a lot of gun reviewers say that everything is the best thing ever. Whatever gun they got given for free is now the new best gun, especially in the print magazines. One author will say, "The best gun for self-defense is this .38 revolver. You don't need anything else." And the very next month's issue, that same author will say, "You carry a revolver, you're stupid. You need this new gun." So whoever's advertising is the best new gun. So we put those two loves together and made Gun University, where we try to give honest reviews and we give grades on guns. And if a gun doesn't meet the grade, it gets a D or an F. It gets a D or an F. And it makes some gun companies upset, but we're only sharing our experience. We try to justify why we gave it a good or a bad grade. We have a few rules. One of them is that anyone that writes for us after 10 articles has to have an average of a B- or a C. So you can't have all A+ guns. You have to literally find stuff in the industry you don't like. So if you wrote 10 articles for us and they're all A's, that's great. I'm going to ask you for the 11th article, will you please find a product you don't like? How
do you quantify what is the so I've got XYZ gun here, and it's supposed to be the newest greatest thing. What's the criteria for A, B, C, D and all that?
Well, first it's completely subjective, which I think is you're kind of hinting at. It's up to you. You tell me, but we'll break down into the category. We give it a report card. We went with the whole university thing. So we go with reliability, accuracy, ergonomics, value. So you might say, man, this gun is super accurate. It's super reliable. The ergonomics are great, but it's 10 grand. It's not a good value. So it might get a D on value, but an A on everything else. And so the final grade is an A- or a B+. As long as you can justify why you gave it the grade, we're open to it. So we don't want every review to be perfect, and we won't take advertisers. So nowhere on the website is there an advertisement for anything, because we don't want to be beholden to the advertising companies. And so far, it's been a lot of fun to write for it, and it's been a lot of fun to put things together and review things and talk about things and give our shake on the products. And if we do say something we don't like, we do have a handgun on there that just crapped the bed on us. Like right on video, it would not work. Over and over, it was malfunctioning every third round. We changed ammo, changed everything. This gun's a dud. I'm sorry. This one didn't work out. This is why it didn't work out. This is why we don't think you should get it. We always try to say what we do recommend instead. So we say, so if you're looking for a good budget gun, under $300, we don't think this one's it. Maybe you should go check this one out instead. So we're trying to help people get into guns safely.
It's interesting when something like that happens, the way people attach their value or their self-worth to their buying choices. I did a video review of a gun that completely would only work 50% of the time. Loaded, pull the trigger, boom. Gun cycle, pull the trigger, click. Not a bad primer, just something wasn't working mechanically in the gun. So as the video ends, I unload it and we drop it in the garbage can. Ha ha. Of course, I didn't clearly throw it in the garbage can, but I mean, I did literally throw it in the garbage, but I took it out.
Yeah.
But people freaked out. You dumbass. If you'd have sent that back, they'd have fixed it. That might be true. I'm just showing you, I paid for this with my own money, and this is what happened. Like, like, I'm not mad at you. I'm not mad at the gun. Yet my truck just was in the shop. It needed a part broke.
Yeah.
Shit breaks. Like, stuff happens. But yeah, that's
I find most of the negative comments are people that already have the gun. They're not really looking for reviews.
That's what I'm saying. They want you to remind them of why they made a good choice. I'll get questions like, "Hey man, could you do a video on this product?" And it's like, well, clearly you just bought 8 of them, so you want to be made to feel good about your choices and your decision making.
Yeah, we didn't know that when we started Gun University, but we quickly learned that we went, oh, look at these stats, look at these comments, look at this interaction. Is the people that want to read the review on whatever, or Google this gun review, are someone who just bought it and they want to, be reinforced they made the right call, because any negative comments aren't, that wasn't fair. You should have let the gun do this. They write, that's not true. I have the gun and it's awesome. Like, well, then why are you reading a review of the gun if you already have one?
Yeah, you already bought it.
Why do you care? And you're right. I've had the exact same thing. If you would have sent it back, they'd take it. They have a great warranty program. This was not a review of their warranty program. This was a review of the gun.
right.
And so they also say, well, that's funny because I've seen 10 other video reviews of this gun and they all gave it great grades. So one person actually said, because of every other review they found to give it great grades or great scores, that I should increase my score. And I tried to respond to that person. I'm like, that's the last thing you should want me to do. I'm not here to give you an average poll of what the internet says about this gun. I'm here to give you my experience and my experience only. My experience happened to be bad, or my experience happened to be good. You now take that and make a decision with it. That's all I can do. Yeah. But this gun doesn't work. I don't know what else to tell you.
Every time you went to the steakhouse, you had a great steak, but I went there on your recommendation and they ruined my steak and cooked it medium well instead of medium rare. Mm-hmm. That's what happened when I went. Period.
Yeah, I'm here
what'd
to
you
share.
think of this? Yeah, what'd you think of the steakhouse I sent you to? It was all right. The potatoes were kind of freaking dry. They overcooked it, but the drink was nice and the atmosphere was good. Would you go back, man? Maybe. That I think is the whole thing that we've been talking about. This due process of digesting information.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of that too sometimes with stuff like, not so much I want to be validated for making the purchase, but this is why we don't do reviews on CarryTrainer's YouTube channel. I mean, I do occasionally share something like, hey, I found I really like this thing, so I'll make a video about it. But there's guys that are hugely successful just filming reviews, and it becomes nothing more than I'm going to film this because it's going to get a bunch of views, and I'm going to film it in a manner that it's going to make a bunch of dudes happy about their purchase and support whatever brand it is. I don't want that to be my life.
Yeah, exactly right.
That's not good. How do people find you? What's the best ways to find you, and why should they find you?
Well, if they're looking to get an FFL or help with their FFLs, find me at RocketFFL. If they're looking to see what I'm up to or my adventures or reviews, I guess Googling me or Gun University is probably the easiest way to do it. There's too many ways. You can go to Gun University and find everything about me if you want from there.
Cleckner, Cleckner.
That's me.
And on Instagram, it's just at Cleckner, at your last name.
That's it.
It's kind of cool, man. It's like you're like one of those one named people, like Sting,
like Cher. Oh, yeah, you went with a much cooler one.
Yeah.
See that? Cool. I went to Cher first, and you went to Sting. That says something.
or Prince.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So at Cleckner on Instagram, RocketFFL, Gun University.
Yeah. Or just Google me for anything else.
Very cool. I appreciate you taking the time. I'm looking forward. You and I are going to go on an elk hunt.
We are.
Yeah, I'm going to bring a pistol.
Okay.
And that 38 special that we're just kidding, folks. No, I very much like to go do a Western elk hunt. We got to get that on the books. And I'd also like to do some long range shooting with you. Pick your brain.
Let's do it, man.
I will talk to you offline. You guys that have listened to the podcast, kind of a meandering discussion about all kinds of things. I hope that you enjoyed our guest today. And I would strongly suggest that you check out some of the social media feeds that we talked about or his business pages. I'm going to be checking out the Rocket FFL. Share it if you enjoyed it. Post a comment, etc. If you dig the podcast, share it with your friends. And as always, tell somebody you love them and don't be dickheads, because nobody likes a dickhead. Be well. Visit our website, CarryTrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S., CarryTrainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@CarryTrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. Training@CarryTrainer.com or CarryTrainer.com.
I said I got me some gunfighter gun law. Gunfighter gun law, baby. Gunfighter gun, oh, no more gunfighter blues. Made in the USA. Amazing lubricity. 100% synthetic, baby. So it's gonna last you longer. So go on CarryTrainer.com and order yourself some gunfighter gun or gunfighter lube to get rid of your gunfighter blues. I said go on and order yourself some gunfighter lube. Gunfighter lube. Yeah!